Welcome to Weird Games and Weirder People, a podcast about role-playing games and the weird, wonderful people behind them.
Hello, wonderful weirdos. This is Diogo Nogueira, and I have a very special guest for you today. I'm talking about Tim Hutchings, the creator of the award-winning role-playing game, solo journaling role-playing game, 1,000-year-old vampire, also the award-winning collection of improving exercise, our vacations, and many other amazing games, very creative games that explore very creative space that we are not seeing in other games. But before I talk about this, let me remind you that if you're listening to the show, you like what you're listening, please subscribe to the show wherever you listen to your podcast, and also leave us a review. We actually have a new review from Ham Steamer from Australia. Thank you, Ham. He says, Diogo's generous interview style brings out honest and thoughtful response from his guests. The chat is informal and follows Diogo's curiosity into the outlook of his fellow creators. There are some fantastically talented guests on this show, and hearing this chat serves to humanize them and bring out inspirational aspects of their work and process. Yeah, that's what I try to do here, and it's very cool to see and learn from other creators. And talking about Tim Hutchings, we talked about how he's shifting his career and taking some time away from teaching, how he really likes to explore these very liminal spaces in gaming, explore different ways to do things. We talked about how he sees his work at exploring his dark corners and crannies that is forgotten in the gaming space. We talked about many inspirations he had for his games, for the way he approached his work. We talked about mental health. We talked about other creators and artists. That was a really inspiring and excellent episode. I hope you love it as much as we did. So let's get weird with Tim Hutchings. Hi. Oh. Hi, Tim. Welcome to Weird Games and Weirder People. I'm so happy to have you here. I'm a big fan of your work. And how have you been?
Well, the polite answer is that I'm great, but I'm actually really having all these emotions right now because I'm quitting my job teaching. And I really like teaching, and I really like my school, like the students and things in the school, and I'm really going to miss it. And so I'm feeling morose. I'm not sure. Yeah, that's how I'm feeling.
Yeah, but why are you leaving your job as a teacher? I love your t-shirt, by the way. If your wonderful weirdos that only listen to this, he's wearing a Highland Paranormal Society from Nate Stram, which is also an amazing creator who I hope to interview here someday too. So that's future plans.
He designs really good t-shirts. I love this t-shirt. Yeah. Here, I'll show you the rest of it. Oh!
Yeah. Really
Look at
nice.
How tasteful that is.
Yeah, it's a gray t-shirt with like a dark gray writing in like a calligraphy high paranormal society, and that's old school like a wood carving drawing of a hand with the dice in his hand and like this mystical eye in another different. Is it red or pink or? Yeah, really pretty t-shirt.
Yeah, really nice.
But why are you leaving your job as a teacher if that's something you're gonna miss that much?
So I teach game design at a pretty good school for game design. I think it's maybe the second school to offer a degree in game design. That's a little fuzzy for me. And I'm paid okay, pretty well, better than most people who teach. And everything is great here, but the school has the school's being weird about stuff. Not any individual person, but the whole school has these terrible financial problems. And that's starting to affect the way I get to do stuff. But also the big thing is that this school is in the Midwest, and I live part-time in Oregon, and I want to live full-time in Oregon. So I'm going to go back to Oregon, which is a beautiful, wonderful place to live. And not that Peoria, where I'm at now, it's surprisingly okay, but it ain't great.
Yeah. What's your favorite thing about Oregon?
Oh, or wow, that's a what a hard question to answer.
Or maybe
Um,
the weirdest thing, since it's the Weird Games
oh
and Weirder People podcast. What's the
yeah,
weirdest
um,
thing about Oregon?
Oregon is really has Portland, Oregon in particular. Literally, you can go buy bumper stickers there that say "Keep Portland Weird," and it's not as weird as it used to be because it got super expensive. So all the weird had to move away and go to cheaper cities.
Mm-hmm.
But still, there's an amazing, amazing game community there. There's people who are doing good works in the world that I agree with. There is lots of things happening in the Pacific Northwest that I think are interesting with music that I like. And it's just beautiful, and it rains like 4 months out of the year. And I love that. Um, yeah, it's just this wonderful place. I grew up in the Midwest, which means long big fields full of stuff, and then
Mm-hmm.
monoculture forests. And the Pacific Northwest couldn't be more different.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Very.
that's not none of
You
that's
have the
weird though.
the well, well, depending where you live. Like, I love this book by Al Sinclair that says, it called "Still Like an Artist," and he said where he come from, and he moved to Texas, and Texas seems like a foreign country to him. Like, so the United States, especially, you have so many different, you have different countries inside, you know, the country. So yeah, it can be a little bit weird, for sure.
There's
Yeah,
a what was his name? The sculptor, I forgot his name. Who, when he came to the Midwest in the '80s, he said, "Oh yeah, here you have big sky. The sky is big here in a way that it's not in New York." And I lived in New York for 20 years, and I knew exactly what he meant, right?
yeah.
And so,
You
if
can
you're in a
see it
place,
completely. Yeah,
yeah, if you're in a place, you can really figure out what makes that place special if you're attentive. And
yeah,
here in Illinois, in the spring and in the fall, there are moments that where the air, wow,
yeah,
it was so
yeah,
disorienting. There are
yeah,
moments where the air is so distinctly, perfectly Midwestern and cool and moist in this way that takes me straight back to my childhood. And I never get that in Oregon or when I was in New York. So every
yeah,
place
yeah,
has its own thing. And it's just how do you attune to it, right?
yeah, for sure.
That's tough.
Give me just 1 minute. My kid is here. Just 1 minute. Hey, sorry.
Oh no, it's all
He's
good.
We are alone here. My wife is went out, and he's using my iPad to draw and stuff. So he made some questions.
Oh, that's great. I 100% want you to go and tell your child how to draw, and then tell me what you told them because that might be interesting.
Oh yeah. Uh, well, I was speaking Portuguese, and he asked me he had a problem because he wanted to delete the layer that he was drawing over. So I had to explain him to go to the layer sidebar and drag it to the left until he saw the trash thing and click on it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so cool because I have a kid too, and she's 11, and
Mm-hmm.
to watch the kids have access to these super sophisticated design concepts when they're
Yeah.
making drawings that I never touched till I was, in college, right?
Yeah.
And to
Yeah.
say, hey,
I tried
working
to
later.
convince him to use the paper. I as much as I can, I try to get him off screens, but yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
but it's such different ways to draw, right? So I totally get the kid. It's like two
Yeah.
different games, wanting to do one versus the other.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. But
I
since
have,
already spent so much time already in the scrims, I try to, yeah, when this, let's try to get out. But yeah, it's a game changer, right? This layer
yeah,
things you can do. Well, doing that on paper is like you can't. So yeah, absolutely.
I I wish I had them with me in my office. My office is a mess, by the way, because I'm moving out. I
Yeah.
wish I had them in my office, but as part of I'm doing all this collage work for the Thousand
Mm-hmm.
Year Old Vampire sequel,
Yeah.
and I've bought up so many like weird old journals and all these random things. Sometimes they're full of drawings, And so I have drawings like, that a child made in like 1860, and they just sometimes they're so beautiful and so sweet, and it's strange how like consistent they are in style.
Yeah.
And one of the really nice things is somehow I wound up with a thing, a book my father had when he was a child, and I don't even know how I got it. I'm sure I somehow took it out of our house because my parents just
Wow.
died. And I was going through it, and I found drawings he made, and I couldn't
Wow,
understand.
that's
It's
so
this
cool.
amazing thing, like how there's two cool things. Like, how did I get this here? But also, I had all of these children whose books I have, all these art books and
Mm-hmm.
things, are from anonymous people. And to go from having that book be anonymous, right, to suddenly
Mm-hmm.
realizing, oh, fuck, my dad, this is my dad's, was
Yeah.
helped me understand better all the other books,
Yeah.
um, who I don't know anyone about, or help me think about them differently.
Yeah. Do, did you see any similarities the way your father used to draw to the way you draw or anything like this? Or did you
Oh, that's
notice any similarities or anything like this? Just out of curiosity, I mean.
no, that's a great question. Actually, no, but my father used to write in all caps, and there'd be all these lists and packing lists and all these
Mm-hmm.
things he'd write. And then one day when I was in college, I wrote something in all caps, and I just was writing in all caps, and I realized his writing and my writing were almost identical for
Wow.
no reason I could understand. He never taught me to make a letter in his life. But again, the way
That's
I
incredible.
write,
Yeah.
down to the way the H's, right? There's this weird way. I don't know how we used to make the
Yeah,
H's
yeah.
anymore. The H's were very distinct. Um, yeah,
That's cool.
it's
That's so cool. Yeah.
really peculiar.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Thing.
Yes.
Maybe the wonderful weirdos out there might not know who you are, and I always love asking the guests who come here to speak in their own words who they are, what is that they do, and if they can share a small weird detail about themselves, maybe a habit, maybe the way you choose your clothes, or maybe you do coffee. And could you do that for us?
Yeah. Well, wait. No, I think the right response is if they don't know who I am, then fuck them.
Oh yeah, for sure. If they don't know, they should know. We'll have links on the show notes, and they'll get to know the amazing work that you do. But
Okay.
yeah.
Hi, my name is Tim Hutchings. I am best known as a game designer. Oh, wait. That's really funny. I have it right here. I'm best known as a game designer of the game Thousand Year Old Vampire. In fact, because this is on, you're going to share a video of this, right? Possibly
Yeah,
for some
with
folks.
snippets. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
will. I will hold up a copy for those
Mm-hmm.
of you who are looking at the video. Those of you who
Yeah.
are not looking at a video, I'm holding up a copy of what looks like an old journal, but it's
Yeah.
not. It has a game hidden
It's
inside. Blah blah blah.
beautiful made. It has all these details and foils, and it's an art book too, right? It's not
Um,
only a game. It's yeah, it's
it's a game.
beautiful.
There's
Yeah,
nothing else in
not
there.
it's not only. Oh yeah.
It lacks any substance other than gamedness. Uh, so that's the only reason anyone knows me or cares about what I do. Although I have a whole secret, sad life that I am trying to be more public about, because to expunge the shame, exercise the shame from my noggin of like a failed art guy. I used to travel around and do art stuff, and had a studio and make conceptual art and things. And I fell out of that world for lots of reasons, and then found art, or found games, found I could do with games things that I couldn't manage with art. And so that's is that all it? What else?
Yeah.
No one else cares about anything else I've ever done. I made
Yeah.
Thousand Year Old Vampire. That's my one line right there.
Wow. I love one that I love that I haven't seen talking so much. I know the collections of drawing exercise that you published to the won an award last year. The awards, right? But our vacation, like
Oh,
the book that you travel and you have all these mundane pictures. I was fascinated about this, and I love how you explore these very different ways to create narrative, to create a game in such different ways that we're used to. And it made me think too to ask something later about if you do enjoy playing the more traditional role playing games too, or you're really well focused on these very unique experiences and more about these solo play experiences. How is your relationships with tabletop RPGs in general?
I play all kinds of games. There's certain games that I feel like I've learned enough from, so I don't really play like Dungeons and Dragons, not the higher editions. If I have to play role playing like games like that, D&D type games, I'm doing the OSR stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but no, I play lots of games. In fact, one of the reasons I'm really excited about going back to Oregon is because there's a really excellent game culture there, and they're continuously showing me things I didn't know that would exist. And I'm really looking forward to that. I'm really into LARPs, live action role plays, black box
Nice.
LARPs, like one shot LARPs where we sit down and we're in a situation and there's not necessarily a problem to solve, but just a place to be in and maybe
Mm-hmm.
be really unhappy and feel what the characters are doing. So yeah, I'm my one of the weird things about my game playing is I'm not a big Powered by the Apocalypse fan, which is a groundbreaking, genre-shattering set of incredibly good ideas put together by the Bakers, who are people that I adore personally. But every time I play Powered by the Apocalypse, I enjoy it, but I just never want to seek it out, and that's a weird game thing. It's kind of like
Yeah.
health food in a way. It's like, oh, I'm perfectly happy eating this, but you had to drag me in to make me do it, and I'm having a good time. But I will always go for the hamburger if I'm left with my own devices.
Yeah, yeah. Well, talking about then junk food, what would be your favorite unhealthy food? I would say.
Um, there's a bit of me that wanted to say plutonium as like a joke, and that's so stupid, and I'm glad I didn't. But one of the things I'm gonna miss when I leave Peoria is a certain type of regional pizza called St. Louis thin crust pizza, which is this
Mm,
absolutely thin cracker with this really weird gooey cheese on it. And you can't get it anywhere else. No other people make it, and I'm really going to miss that. And I can buy the parts to make it in Peoria, but I can't buy them back in Oregon. It uses a really weird cheese blend that has smokiness in it,
mm-hmm.
called Provel, a regional Midwestern cheese. And I'm gonna miss that. I
Yeah,
eat poorly, and I like to eat. When I eat poorly, I like eating that. I had that. I made one of those pizzas for breakfast today because again, I only have a
nice.
few days left to eat them.
Yeah, yeah. You gotta soak it up as much as you can before you go away. I always
Yeah.
do this. I love junk food too. I love uh, every time I go, for example, in the US to go to some conventions. I always try to taste as much as the local food or something weird. Like Gen Con always have some weird new hamburger they make with peanut butter, bacon, and pretzel or something weird like this. And I always try
Peanut
them
butter
out.
burgers go way back.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you had White Castles
No,
hamburgers?
no, I
There's
haven't.
White Castle hamburgers are these other little itty bitty hamburgers, and they're a proto hamburger. They go back to like the 1920s or 1910s, before hamburgers are really a thing, and like as a company. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a White Castle's hamburger near Gen Con, and they're completely distinct, like nothing else you've ever had. I
Wow.
really would recommend you try those next time you go to Gen Con.
Oh, yeah, I will try. I've seen them, and people always talk about them. Some people say very good things about White Castle. Some people say very bad things about White Castle.
Like I heard a bunch of your viewers groan when I said you should try White Castles, right? They haven't even heard this yet. This is days in the
Yeah.
future, but still, I heard the ripple in the
Yeah, yeah.
time
Space time
continuity there.
continue. Yeah. Talking about this, one thing that I always love asking guests here, since the podcast is about the weird, is that would you try defining what is weird for you, and how you like exploring that either in your work or in your life in general? Seeking maybe weird experiences.
So that's a great question because and this is where it's worrisome, right? Is that I don't necessarily think that a lot of what I do is weird. And I'm not being weird or wacky or anything, but I am often realizing that I go across a little border as I'm just doing the things that seem perfectly natural for me.
Mhm.
And that's like a weird problem. That can be a weird problem, right? Um, I do know. Yeah, so what is weird? There's I like weird whenever we're talking about it as like something outside of common experience. Weird with a Y in like the old pulp pulp horrors type things. But for me, wow, that's a really good question. When I make the things I make as games, which I acknowledge are very different than what is often made as a game, I'm not doing it to be weird. I'm doing it to explore little nooks where there's darkness and cobwebs, and I'm slithering into those gaps and then finding what I can like making a cast and pulling it out and looking at that shape, and that's my new game. And I'm not doing it to be weird. I'm doing it because it's interesting and new. Um, does that make sense?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. I think you
uh,
said a lot there. I think you the way you talk, you're talking about curiosity. You're talking about being authentic to what you want to explore, you want to seek out, non-conforming to what people expect of a game should be, what a role-playing game is, what fantasy is. Uh, you're talking about authenticity, being yourself, and this is something I want to explore. I'm not thinking about what people know, what will sell, for example.
yeah,
So I think there's a lot about this, and you're talking about exploring what is in the dark, what is cobwebs. It has a little bit of the weird, a bit of the sinister, a bit of the imagination there, that's the unknown, right?
yeah.
And yeah, and I think that's all speaks to the weird. It all speaks to something that is outside of what is expected,
Yeah.
So
The we see like I guess the word weird can be really do a lot of work, right? Like this is something entirely
yeah,
outside of experience versus look at me, I am doing a funny dance in the middle of the room, so everyone pays attention to me, right? There's a whole weird
yeah,
slide there, um, and I guess there's things that are outside of language. Okay. I'm going to do this. This is going to take like 30 seconds.
okay.
What's his name? Jacques Derrida is a philosopher, French guy, deconstruction, blah, 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 and postmodernist. And he had the idea that hey, you have the Hegel kind of thing. It's hard to line up my hands in the video
Mm-hmm.
thing. Where we have language and understanding, and there's things that are outside of language, and we don't understand them until we put that bubble of language to encompass them, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think there's a big idea that weird is maybe that thing that's outside language, and I think that's really cool. And it's interesting because I've never had this thought before. But what does it mean? Because you encounter something that's outside of that, and that's weird. But what does it mean to make something that is in some way outside of that? Does that mean that the person who has to run outside of that line is being weird at the time? And maybe that's yeah. So can people be weird in a way that is about creating and finding experience as opposed to performing weirdness for its own sake? What a useless question
Yeah.
that.
Well, I think so. I think that's the thing about saying about being authentic, about being you, and not worrying about if this is fitting some kind of mold, right? And you're not doing it to call attention to yourself. You're just doing it because it's something you feel the need to do. Like you
Yeah,
want to explore this, and then sometimes even you know it's contrary to what people want, right? Uh, some of these games really want to explore, and there are really weird ideas out there. They it's very difficult to have a successful commercial value, right? So
Yeah.
I think it is about really uh, making art, right? Expressing yourself, exploring and experimenting and expressing, and without feel the needs to conform to someone else's expectation and just doing your thing. And I think inevitably, if you're not trying to fit someone else's idea what that thing will be, it will seem weird to other people. It's the thing you said. I don't think my stuff is weird because it's the stuff it is in you. That's the normal for you. But for other people, yeah, we are probably weird, right? I I'm
I
sure other people would. People call me weird at work, for example. I have a day job too, and yeah,
No, it's like there's definitely like this kind of baseline. Like this is how it's so strange looking in the video and trying to get my hands to line up. I'll look at my hands, trying to get people like people who have a kind of baseline thing, and like this is what we do, especially in an office environment. And to find out that you do something outside of support that is always going to be interesting and strange to folks. I like the
yeah,
idea um, of of encountering and creating the weird as an explorer, in the sense like I'm going to go and explore this dangerous new mosquito ridden territory and possibly die so you don't have to, right? I'm doing this to make your life easier, and then we're going to
yeah,
open that space up and colonize it, and now we can all make vampire games about whatever it is.
yeah,
um, so yeah, I'm a brave explorer going into dangerous territory and looting and stealing and spreading plague, and then coming back and being hailed as a hero. That's my
yeah.
role as a game designer.
For sure, we all are. We are heroes of dice and cards and stuff. Tim, I'm noticing you make a lot of jokes, and I am a big fan of comedy. Do you like comedy too? Or do you watch shows? Do you like stand up or anything like this? Or you're just naturally funny, you play around and stuff?
Oh, actually, that's a really. I think that I had some big thoughts about how comedy works in games and art, especially. But what do I say? Just like health food, I enjoy it if I'm in front of it, but I very seldom seek it out. Right.
No, okay.
I again, I love it, but it never would occur to me to go and watch a video of a comedian performing, even though I'm roaring with laughter and having the time of my life.
Yeah, yeah.
I do not know what's wrong with my brain that I don't mark certain
Wow.
things that are good and then just
Yeah,
go.
yeah. W-
Um,
Do you watch something? I mean, you are a teacher, you're a father, you're a game designer, so you're probably already very busy. But do you like watching shows? Do you do do you have a hobbies outside of role playing games? Do you do to procrastinate, for
oh,
example?
okay, that's a great question. My procrastination is geographically specific, especially when I'm here in Peoria, because I have a little apartment that's terrible to be in, and I don't have a TV, I don't have anything. Although I do have my phone, of course. And so when I'm there, I will watch one or two episodes of the Clarence cartoon. This has been my pattern for the past couple months, while I ride my little folding exercise bike. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the Clarence cartoon is absolutely charming, hilarious, and really smart in a lot of ways, and I love it. And in that same space, I'm also am a Rick and Morty fan.
Mm.
They're really so good, and there's that whole realm of dark comedy like BoJack Horseman and things.
Oh,
That
BoJack's so good.
Yeah, I really like them, and it's tricky because there's people who like that stuff for the wrong reason. You don't get.
No, I think it's
Oh,
very
these are bad
profound.
people.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, these are
I
bad,
mean,
terrible people.
I admit the idea of Ricky Morty is very good, but I hate Ricky. He's such a jerk.
Yeah,
I can't watch it. I can't.
yeah.
He's terrible. I
And then
can't.
you watch him attempt to commit suicide by building a device to disintegrate his head and fail, and you're like, oh, he hates himself too, So there's like these
Yeah.
really such good
Yeah.
moments from those shows.
I haven't got so far because I got like the first episodes.
That
Maybe
was
it's like
that's like the first season. I am so sorry.
I I should try out. Maybe it's like The Office. I love The Office, but the first season is very hard to watch, Michael. And maybe it's like that. I have to
Yeah.
push through and it will get better, right? Because they're finding out, like seriously, they're finding out what the series, what the character is, and maybe the first episodes he's too much of a jerk, and I always stop. But yeah, BoJack is
Um,
amazing.
yeah. So I mean, I do like watch TV shows and things, and I
Mm.
used to be an editor for commercials and TV shows and stuff.
Oh wow.
So there's like maybe part of it's like I just don't want to watch that stuff anymore. I don't watch so much because I used to
Yeah,
do it for a
it
job.
was work. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
work. Yeah,
if I work at a pizza restaurant, I'm not going to want to eat pizza in my spare time.
for sure.
Um,
Yeah.
although I've kind of learned that that's just not true with everyone I met who works in pizza restaurants. They all love pizza.
Yeah.
um,
And
yeah.
what would you do in Oregon? Like you said, you do that, and we're there. And what is the other? What do you do to procrastinate when you're somewhere else?
Oh, so like if I'm in my office, which is where I am now,
Hmm.
I play computer games because this is the only place I have a proper computer. And so I fuck off and I'll play computer games. And so I just beat the game Book of Hours, which is a
Mm.
game about being a librarian by the people who made Cultist Simulator. Um,
Wow. What?
I
Cultist Simulator?
Cultist Simulator. Yeah, Cultist
Ah.
Simulator is a really interesting game where you're laying down cards from deck and you're kind of doing these things that are timed, and you're an occultist. In mostly, you like read books
Hmm.
and kind of like keep other people out of your way as you pursue dark things or hit forbidden knowledge. Forbidden knowledge is not dark and scary. It's just occultism, right? It's like what's beyond the
Mm-hmm.
veil. What hidden systems
Yeah.
exist outside of man? Well, I can figure this out. And you plumb those depths. And the game is cool because it doesn't tell you to do that, right? The game doesn't tell you how to operate it or
It's
what
like
the objective
SimCity. It's just there, and you go clicking, explore, you
is.
find your own objectives and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Very cool.
And so then there's a second version, which is about opening up an old house that had books in it. It's these are just neat little games, and I love roguelike games and
Mm.
roguelite games, or as a former student put it, rogue-shaped games, which I'm a huge fan of in all their
Nice.
forms.
Yeah. I've just started playing Hollow Knight,
Okay,
which is pretty cool. Yeah. And yeah. Have you been playing any roguelike games recently?
I have been playing a game called Balatro, which is a rogue light take on poker. So you're building
Hmm.
poker hands, but in the roguelike sense, right, you're permanently able to make changes to your deck of cards and to
Mm.
various modifiers you have. There's a rogue light version of the game Minesweeper, and I love that. Played the heck out of that.
Very
Um,
cool.
and
Yeah.
then for action games, something Cyber Arc, something like that, where you're exploring spaceships full of aliens. And again, so I just love the roguelike format.
Yeah. Yeah.
Slay the
Yeah.
Spire and Inscription with a Y. Inscription is probably what I think is one of the most important games ever. Like everyone should play
Yeah.
Inscription at some point.
Would you care to tell us a little bit more why Inscription is so important?
It's tough because it's a game with big spoilers, right? And the idea is you're sitting and you're playing a little card game, right? A little
Mm-hmm.
card game where you're putting out monsters or animals and sacrificing things to power other things against this mysterious person. And the game has a lot of depth to it, and it just keeps
Okay.
going and it keeps unfolding again in a way that echoes the idea of occultism, right? Like here's the crass world, and then behind that are a series of behind these veils are a series of layers that go way back, and there's things that go between them, so we can manipulate and understand and perceive if we engage in certain rituals or certain actions. Um, yeah,
That's great.
it's
Yeah,
a card
that's
game. Just play the little card game. You'll be perfectly happy.
yeah.
Sorry, my phone keeps making a noise,
That's
and I
all good.
don't know.
I haven't been hearing it, so maybe it
Okay.
won't show up. But uh, since we're talking about computer games, there's other questions that I always do here is ask if the guest thinks role-playing games by themselves are weird, compared to other kind of games or the kind of media. What do you think role-playing games fit in this weird spectrum? And what would be your favorite part of role-playing games?
I gotta tell you that um, there has been a shift in role playing games. When I was a kid, when you played Dungeons and Dragons, it felt innately weird and transgressive. You had these weird shaped pieces of plastic which you've never seen before in your life, and you're playing this game. And I lived during the Satanic Panic in the United States, right, where Christian kids are saying you're going to go to hell if you play that game, and people are taking away their kids' books and literally burning them, right? And I grew up in this thing where, again, like Dungeons and Dragons was behind a couple of veils, and that
Hmm.
made it really special. And now that iceberg is poked entirely out of the water, and there's a whole town built up there, and there's a lot of games that just role playing games generally aren't special and uncomfortable and spooky and weird anymore in the sense that they used to be in the 80s and 90s. Um, and that's a bummer, right? And I want to know, like, like, aside from drug use and I don't know, mild crimes, what occupies that space, that hidden space, right? I'm of
Yeah.
the age now that the students I have are going to keep that hidden from me because I'm one of the authority figures uh,
Yeah.
who would make them stop. Yeah, and that's
Nowadays, probably some weird stuff on the internet, right? Those
yeah.
forums, I don't know. Yeah.
Um, I
I
think
mean,
maybe as awful as it
in,
sounds, the
in
like the something awful world maybe occupied that for a while, right? That
yeah,
we're awful people hiding or whatever it is was happening. We have
that's
secret things
true.
within secrets.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, in United States, RPGs become very popular because of D&D, but I mean, outside, some places they're still occupy this weird space. But the popularity of board games kind of shift this too because people see RPGs in kind of it's like board games now, right? And board
Yeah.
games are really really out there. You
Yeah.
talk you talk about a lot about occultism and the veil, this kind of mystery, and I know I always ask this more in the end of the episode, but I'm like, do you are you a religious person? Do you have any kind of spirituality or philosophy, or do you seek the occult? Do you explore this supernatural side of things?
You would be hard pressed to find someone who wanted all of that to be real more than me. I just desperately used to want it. Like, please show me a ghost. Please just give me some fucking hint that there's something more than, the flabby skin I live in White Castle hamburgers, right? And in the Midwest, especially, we used to travel around and go to, explore old buildings. When I lived in Kansas City, a tenth of the city was just abandoned,
Yeah.
12th of the city, whatever, whole sections. And we could go, and I just don't know. I've never in my life
Never felt
been
anything?
religious. I've never believed in ghosts, even though I wanted to, all that stuff. I am absolutely the dullest dishwater pragmatist ever. And I would love to be proven wrong, right? And I'm like, I want to be Yuri Geller, but no, I'm like, I'm hiding in the shadow of the amazing Randy, right?
Yeah.
Such a disappointment.
I
Ah,
I kind of have a theory that people that write a lot about these things, ghosts and stories. Even though, of course, we don't believe it, I mean, it is, but we kind of have this, we could be proven wrong. So we have like a 1% believe in that. And do you, are you completely, have you never had any even weird sensation, like, at night we watch like a horror movie and then go alone in the kitchen and hear something. So there's always this like small thing that, ooh, and of course we don't believe it, but we always like, maybe it is, right? Do you have this feeling too?
I wish I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I work to get myself scared. I actively want to spook myself, and I will imagine horrific things. When I was a child, the way I would fall asleep, I don't know if I've certainly never told this story in public, because I could not fall asleep when I was a kid. I just terrible. I'd be up all night.
Mm-hmm.
Is I would imagine like hideous things crouching in the corner of the room watching me, and if I moved, they would take a couple steps toward me, and I give myself shivers of fear with every twitch, and it was great. And that's how I get myself to fall asleep. And I still do versions of that now. I have an art studio here in Illinois that's in the church, the basement of an old cathedral, not old, but a cathedral built in the 1960s. And it's somewhat spooky. And I lean into that as much as I can, and I try to make myself scared. I used to have to walk. I'd leave the lights down and I'd walk, and there was a mannequin that someone had that was always in the same corner, and it always spooked me, and I loved it.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then the day it wasn't there, it spooked me even more, and that was great. But no, I'm when it comes to the unnatural, I'm an agnostic, because again, I can't prove that it's not there. And I have to acknowledge that it's possible, but I have trouble believing.
Skepticism. I know. I totally understand, but is that just want to believe in this? Let's leave the 1% out there just so we can enjoy it, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's the secret for me. Tim, are you? You said you were working on an expansion for 1,000-Year Vampire, or is it like a revised version? I think I misread it, but do you plan on making it like a expanded, like a board game or something, or just an expanded version of the game?
Oh, so it's a different. It's. I'm not going to make the same thing twice, and it's not a board game. It's a logical next step. I do these hand gestures on video. I don't do these whenever I teach it. I don't do these in my normal life. It's a logical next step for exploring the space and the rule system and the narrative of 1,000-Year-Old Vampire. So it's about 85% 1,000-Year-Old Vampire, but told from the opposite end of the story, because you're a human who's met one, and so that's a different set of concerns. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it happens in a very narrow window of time, and the concerns are different, and the way some of the mechanics work are different. And here, hang on a second. Yeah, that's it. One of the things that I'm figuring out is that I talked about how I was collecting old scrapbooks and things. Oh shit, these are in order. I just forgot. I forgot these are in order. I have been making collages.
Wow.
That are built to fit within the book. And then if you are stumped for about what's happening within your narrative, you just flip to a random collage and read something. No, that's a terrible one. With the purchase of the cottage went all the Indian relics, historical collections, furniture, and fixtures. Or I read, reclaim the corrupted. Or, well, I don't know. Last time it took them 200 years. And so I can read that stuff.
Yeah.
Or I can, a player, if they're stumped, can just go to those and they get unstumped pretty fast. And it works really well in play tests.
Amazing. And they look fantastic too for, the weirdos that can see it. But, the collage, they have pictures and fragments of, newspapers and writing and foliage too.
and
Yeah.
I really like making them. Right?
Yeah.
They're more fun to make than it is to make the game, which is a problem. But
How is your process of making these colors? And by the way, do you have any kind of creative ritual that you perform before you start working or writing or drawing or making art that helps
uh,
you get into the mood?
no, I don't have any kind of ritual, and that's bad. I really don't. I'm a bad worker, and I'm lazy, and and I have no stick to itiveness, and I sulk. I have all these terrible things that I do, and so it's really hard to get into the spaces to work. It's terrible for
Yeah,
me. And but whenever I go to my studio here in Illinois, there's nothing there except me and my phone and the studio crap. Right? Just I have a giant room just heaped up with tables full of stuff, and I really can get into the zone, the flow, right, in the
mm-hmm.
academic sense of sitting and working and just making collages. And so I don't even need a ritual for that. What I might do when I'm there, I have no distractions, which is incredible. I might have an audiobook or play music on my phone while I work, and that's it.
I
And so
see.
that's
Yeah.
really crucial, I think, for me being enmeshed in what it is I'm doing. Because
Mm-hmm.
again, I'm a terrible person and I produce so poorly.
Why do you say that? Do you have a hard time sitting down? Or do you not have a schedule? Uh, have you tried anything? Do you want to try it? How your
um,
relation to this?
as soon as I encounter the slightest resistance, I crumple like a paper house. It's I don't. It's just like
And then you take like days to come back to try it
yeah.
again.
Well,
Yeah.
again, the collages are easy, and that's part of the reason I like them. They're satisfying, they're fun, they're an accumulation, an accretion of stuff.
Mm.
I make them. I have a whole bunch of rules for how I make them that exist in my head, unspoken for the most part. And then at the
Do
same
do
time,
do you
I
wanna
used to
try
teach.
speaking
What
then?
I,
Do you wanna try
I
speaking
actually
then?
I wrote some of them out for my notebook, for my little blog a while, like not my blog.
Ah,
What's it called? Newsletter.
Substack? A newsletter, yeah.
Newsletter. Um, one. What the fuck? Oh, number one is there's rules like the rules of visual design. I used to
Oh, yeah.
teach art, and so I had to learn in order to teach art the rules of visual design, graphic design that I'd never learned, and they're actually really helpful. So those all apply, and it's really fun to say, "Hey, look, I know that this piece is going to audibly click when I put it right here because all those rules are being obeyed just right, and that's good."
Mhm.
But also, I have rules like you have all those bits of text, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't. So this is a rule I didn't know until I really thought it out. You can see there's all the. I am for those of you who are on the podcast. I'm holding this
Yeah.
thing up to the camera, this collage.
Mhm.
There's rules about the adjacency of pieces which are clearly from the same text source. You can't have the same fonts, the same sources next to each other for the text clippings. I have a rule against putting kids. I actually thought this one out consciously when I realized why some things were bothering me. There's very few children in there because I don't want people to feel pressured to put children. I don't know if I wanted to put them in at all in their gory, awful vampire stories, right?
That's
Um,
true, yeah.
because I don't like even the idea of children
Yeah.
being endangered. In
Mhm.
a story that someone's telling to themselves, I don't want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
What are the fucking rules? I
Mm,
realized some rules partway through, so not all the collages follow the same rules. That
yeah.
sentence fragments. Whenever I cut out a fret sentence fragment, I can't. I don't include the punctuation at the end, the period or the comma. I have to get rid of
Mhm.
that. These are boring rules.
But
I
it's fascinating because one of the things about creativity that I always read about is how you incentivize creativity by creating limits for yourself, and you're forced to move freely
yeah,
inside that very limited framework, and that encourages creativity.
a hundred
And
percent. Yeah,
yeah,
There's
Yeah.
nothing less exciting than saying, "Oh, you can do whatever you want."
Endless possible. Yeah, yeah. It's scary because you have no. The limitations work like poles you can see in the horizon. And you can say, "Oh, I can do this. I can that. I can't go past there, so I have to create my space here." You
Mhm.
talked about one of your difficulties, which is, you know, you call yourself sitting down to work. I love this phrase that put your ass where your heart wants to be. Uh, would you say that that's one of your difficulties? But what would you say is one of your strengths? Something you appreciate yourself that you think really helps you in your craft and your work. Do you identify anything like this for you?
My normally I would do a false humility dance and never admit anything, but I think the thing that I'm really good at, and that helps me make my games that are interesting, is that I have this whole art thinking background, where it's like I know a little bit of, hey, I talked about Derrida a second ago. Who the fuck does that? I have this thin,
Yeah,
thin, thin art based body of knowledge that I can use as tools within the art world, and then I can use a lot of those here when I'm thinking about game systems. And I think that's part of my problem is I'm like, oh hey, I can visualize this amazing structure and I see exactly how it's going to work, and but now I have to go in and fill in all the muscles around those bones and put the fat in, and that's boring. Um, and so
yeah.
that's like what I struggle with is actually I have to write, a bunch of prompts
Fill in
for,
the blanks. Yeah, yeah. A bunch
yeah,
of
just filling in the blanks. That's a bummer. And I'm actually trying, experimenting with hiring someone to help, because I am terrible to work
yeah.
with in any sense. And I'm experimenting with hiring someone to like help me
I
with prompts.
I'm feeling a lot of kinship with you about this.
I'm
I always
such a
have
monster.
yeah.
I
I
cannot
mean,
I can't creatively collaborate with anyone.
it's
It's
very hard.
yeah.
It's very hard. Uh, I had this very trouble working with this too. One thing that helped me was doing Jerry Seinfeld's technique of having a wall calendar of the whole year, and I put very low objective for me. Like, oh, I have to sit down and write something, like a paragraph or draw something. And I do this. I cross the X on the day, and I celebrate or something, and that kind of me motivates to keep going because if I can keep the worm in the calendar so big, I'm like, yes, I managed to, I know, 3 months without making something every day. It
Yeah.
was really good. Yeah.
I just encountered a quote, and I can't remember who they were. It was a Dutch writer, I think, which was, I write 10 minutes a day without celebration or despair, something like that. And they're just like, yeah,
Yeah,
I write, and I'm like, oh, what a great idea,
that's perfect. Yeah, yeah.
No, no,
Consistency is more important than intensity. Yeah, yeah.
and the
One
thing
minute.
is,
Again,
oh,
my son is here. Sorry, 1 minute.
okay, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Um, what one
he,
of
he he
one of the
wanted to
tra-
show me the drawings. Just that.
oh, that's awesome. I wish I'd seen the
Yeah.
drawings.
Yeah.
Next time he comes back, hold them up for me because I want to see them.
Sure.
One of the things that I know I can do is if I sit down and make myself work for 10 minutes, write for 10 minutes, for example, then the next hour is a lot easier, right? But that first 10 minutes is
Yes. Yes.
murderous. Um, and partially, oh, this is such a weird thing to say out loud, but I've been trying to talk about stuff more obviously. I started taking attention deficit disorder medicine, and that really helps. Like, it helps me stay focused once I can get on to a thing. And
Mm-hmm.
I just, as an adult, I had this whole thing, and I had all of these college professor types that I was working with saying, "Oh yeah, you totally have this. It manifests in for university professors. It does exactly what you're describing." And
Mm-hmm.
I finally broke down, and I was able to get prescribed, and it just was life changing.
Ah,
But
it
also, I have
is.
to be careful because that same medicine is really good at making me play video games. Right? I just get it helps me focus on
Super
whatever it is I
focused.
have to
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, that 10
Yeah.
minutes, I'm going to play this back and watch this and say, Tim, that 10 minutes of sitting down and working is what you have to do to staple yourself to the chair, because then you'll be fine for the next hour.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I I I have anxiety and autism, and I do take stuff too, and it really is a game changer. I mean, it really helps, especially anxiety. I mean, and
Yeah.
it brings me down because sometimes I can get over my head, and I'm not here, I'm not hearing anything, I'm not feeling anything, and
Mm,
these things really help me bring me down. And so I'm happy you sought help, and
yeah.
it's able to help you, but yeah, we also have to control these things. One thing that I have to control is because of autism. Games and making games is one of my special interests, so I can get into it and forget everything else. So I have to have this work of getting out of
Oh,
this
wow.
world sometimes,
You have to like
Yeah.
leave a rope to climb back out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
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 Huh.
Uh, being a teacher and being having this knowledge about art and making such interest games and knowing all these different kinds of games, have you ever thought of maybe joining these two things and maybe writing more, maybe making a book about game design or maybe tabletop role playing games, anything like this?
Um, I don't think that it's interesting because I'm on the cusp of that. I'm leaving teaching, and for example, I have a really nice game survey class I built, and I'm handing it over to someone. The person I'm taking it over is an excellent researcher and framer of pedagogy, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm none of those things. I just shout and run around in circles. And if they take what I have and pass it through what they have and add themselves to it, we might actually have something that could be a book. And I think about that because I don't want to make a book, but I wonder, like, what have I done that is proven to be useful that could be a book? But I couldn't. Oh, what the hell? What is this? That is so funny. Um,
Yeah, I don't know. It makes sometimes.
that's it made a
Sometimes, yeah.
uh, those of
An
you who are
emoji.
listening at home, an emoji of a thumb popped up because I made a
Yeah.
dramatic gesture on the screen. But yeah, I don't have a book in me. One of my great
Yeah.
shames was that over COVID times, I was asked to write a chapter for an academic game book, and I failed. I couldn't do it, partially because I couldn't focus,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
also
It's
because,
hard
again, I don't
times.
think I don't create new knowledge in a way that I'm not a real academic, right? I
But
can't do that.
sometimes it's not about creating new knowledge, it's about maybe organizing and presenting the knowledge that's spread out there
I
that
don't do
you've
that either.
collected. Yeah.
I don't know what it is I do, but it's neither of those things.
That's great, but the things that you do. Another question I have: do you think you can identify any kind of a voice in your work, or maybe a weird mark that you leave in the games that you made? The Thousand Year Old Vampire, the collection of drawings, the Our Vacation. Do you think you have any threads linking them? Could you identify it?
Um, I definitely think there's conceptual links, but I don't, and I think that if you say as a game designer, there's a fist or a voice, right? A fist was like, actually, this is a great piece of trivia.
Yeah.
Telegraph operators would tap out their messages, Morse
Mm-hmm.
code operators, and they would have a distinctive way of doing it, and that was called their fist, right? And so
Okay.
during World War One, people would learn to recognize the fists of people just in case someone was captured and someone else's World War One or two or whatever, sending messages.
Yeah.
Um, I think I have a fist as a game designer around mechanics, but I don't have like a narrative voice that I use because my games demand voices, rules voices, and narrative voices that are so specific to what they are. I think, um,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. So I
It
do think,
does,
yeah.
but don't you think you do a little bit with thematic consistency in the terms of loss and fading away uh, something that was in the past, like the vampire, the lost book, the vacations that are being
Yeah.
lost in this mundane thing. So it has this kind of melancholy in them in a way, don't they?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And if like I think maybe too there's like a theme maybe across all my games of the idea that you're not self-determined, but you're determined by what happens around you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we locate ourselves maybe, but I don't want if that's true, I don't care, right? If that's my
Mm-hmm.
theme, if that's
Yeah.
a reoccurring thing that happens in my work,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll let
Yeah.
someone else figure that out when they're writing little essays about me for, when I'm 100 years from now as a
Sure.
marginal
Yeah.
contributor, to whatever.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
100 years from now, no one's writing essays about me. I was just thinking about like the art world, how we analyze people over the course of their career after they're dead. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Of
I
course.
I don't do any of this intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, I'm looking for spaces in systems that usually tie to the real world, some obscure thing in the real world, or some historical moment where there's a opportunity for an interesting play, an experience, or something. That's what I'm looking for. Which
Awesome.
is totally not true for Thousand Year Old Vampire. Now that I say that out loud. Yeah, what the fuck? 1,000 Year Old Vamp. Yeah, I don't know. If I
Yeah.
was
It's something that attracted you in some way, and maybe that specific part of what you seek in Thousand Year Apart hasn't been explored. So maybe that's one of the nooks and crannies that was in the dark about
yeah,
vampires, right?
yeah. I got to
Yeah.
be careful because the more self-aware I become, the more
You
likely
don't
it
want to
is.
be self-aware.
What? Well, the
You,
more self-aware I become, the more likely it is my creators will have to kill me. No, but I don't know. I
yeah.
really do think that I should be more insightful about myself and my own methods. But but when I have an intuitive engine, right, that has all this stuff packed into it, like a placer mine, and
Mm-hmm.
it has a certain kind of output, or it's creating outputs that I think are interesting, I don't want to fuck with that, right? I want to be
That's
amused,
true.
pleased by the things I make.
Yeah.
Um,
Probably Salvador Dali wouldn't want to be self-conscious. He wanna just let the subconscious do the work. So
if I can't believe I just compared a brain to a placer mine. I'm gonna write that down. That's really funny.
yeah.
Wait. Can I do the footnote, the historical footnote here?
Sure.
Placer
Yeah.
mining was a term. Placer, I think it comes from Spanish. It was an English to Spanish word meaning lazy or placer plots. I don't know. But the idea, it was people who would mine for gold by making complicated channels of along like a sluiceway, and they'd throw sand, and then the sluiceway would have all these little pockets and stuff where the heavier particles of gold would settle in, and so it was considered a. I like the idea of my brain being that complicated sluice way, and things go through.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
there you go. What a stupid thing to know. It's
it's
ridiculous.
it's fun to think about this stuff because it helps people understand the way they think too. I believe. Another thing that I ask, creators that come here is that maybe they can identify where their ideas usually come from. I know as game designers and artists, we're always drawing from all experience we have from our daily lives. Uh, but sometimes we have some places we go back through. I myself have, the stuff that I experienced in my childhood, the media, which was kind of a refuge from my life. So I draw a lot from there. Uh, but maybe are you a creator that draws more inspiration from the outside, the things you're experiencing nowadays, or things that are inside of you that accumulated, over time, some memories and this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't think my day to day life has any significant impact of what I make at all. I've and I
But
and
I
that's
mean,
I used to think that way, right? But I don't think
Mm-hmm.
anymore. I used to like live this life where I'm like, oh hey, look at these cracks in the sidewalk. I think I can work with that, literally, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think now, and it's and I Jason Morningstar, the one of my favorite game designers, says the same thing,
Yeah.
where it's like I continuously pour through sorts of information looking for historical moments or these cultural moments or these systems that existed at one time, and then somehow that's what sparks things off. I think that's the big thing, right? And if that spark connects is based on just this way
Mm-hmm.
I built my brain. um, yeah.
So
Go ahead.
so you sorry.
No, please
I
do.
interrupted you. So you do go through stuff. You go seek out these inspirations in an active way, or just something that happens while you read books or you consume media. How how is that process work for you?
Okay, I guess there's two tiers here. I used to be, and I because I've gotten lazy, an avid consumer of nonfiction, of books on everything under the sun, and my goal was to know 2% about any given thing that came up. Right. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't my goal, but that's like what was effectively what I was aiming at. Um, fuck, I just totally lost the question. Why was I saying this?
It's
What did
about
I?
inspiration. About you, how do you seek
Oh,
inspiration? You're always
yes.
searching for
Yeah.
something, or
So,
you're
so
just consuming things and then you find something and then you go look for it.
I think, yeah, I think partly too is that there's a second tier on whenever I am thinking something is interesting, which is that tier of how is it being communicated to me? How is whoever it is that's presenting it repositioning it? Like if I go the worst, like I will go to a tiny museum of the worst type, and that I love those more than good museums because the curatorial process, the way the things are put, everything about the place shows is if it's the worse it's done or the more weirdly it's done. Hey, there's that word, weird. The more I get out of it, because there's always this second tier of here's the real thing, and then how's it being presented to us on top of that. And there's a kind of fluxion happening there where there's again multiple systems that are affecting how it's being communicated, and so that actually might be like a weird key is that how things are presented poorly is part of what I think is interesting about them.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
That's
don't know.
that's very weird. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think
And
it's ineffective for sure.
yeah, because it makes you stop and wonder about it, right? Because it's poorly presented, it's misrepresented sometimes. So you have to stop and think about it, and maybe that inspires you into new ideas. Hello, wonderful weirdos. This is Diogo Nogueira again, and today I'd like to talk to you about one of my favorite games, a game that I created. And if you listen to the podcast, I love dinosaurs, and it's called Primal Quest. It is a weird stone and sorcery adventure game. It's a NSR game, which is this game that caters to the old school style of play, but has more modern and more cinematic gameplay adapted to our modern sensibilities. It has adventure with dinosaurs, ancient civilizations, spirity, sorcery, aliens, elder gods, and much, much more. It's very pulpy. It has, a complete rule set, a mini hex scroll, an adventure introductory adventure. You can find it at Exalted Funeral, itch.io, Drive-Thru RPG, and your best local game store. And we're releasing more and more stuff for it, so stay tuned and play Primal Quest. So let's get back to the weird with our chat. What was the recent thing like this that you would think? Do you keep notes of these ideas, of these weird things that happened, and or no, or you just
Um,
wait for the next one while after you finish your current project, you wait for the next one and you do that.
well, what happens? I keep notebooks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this is mostly about teaching stuff. but I'm continuously building notes and keeping notes. I'm continuously I'm driving or whatever, and I will say, "Hey, phone, text me this message," and then I will
Yeah.
text myself a game idea, and so it's just these constant little flashes, right? That
Yes.
then maybe they're good enough to deal with. Keeping track of them all until I can deal with them is one of the hard things. You asked for a recent one, and I what did I do? It's right here. Hang on,
Okay.
I got it right here. I'm not going far.
Mm-hmm.
I'm packing up my office to leave, and I have a whole bunch of things like the Object Game by Peter Code, which was made in 1992 or 91 or 93. And
Mm-hmm.
that game has a VHS cassette in it, and it's not obvious what you do with the game. You open it up, and there's these little cylinders and a ball and some paper. And I, working with my local library, was given access to a VHS cassette player and watched the video. And it's this guy giving this incredibly, I'm not going to say painful, but very 1990s. I am at a conference, not an academic conference, but like a industry thing, and I am presenting my ideas to this group of guys in suits, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching this, and it was really strange. I'm like, I don't know why I'm so interested in this, but at one point, the guy says the words, "I know who I am. I know my price." And I wrote that down in my little book because I wanted to remember it. It was such a great phrase. And he's actually talking about how soda cans know that they're soda cans in a soda machine, and they know their cost in the soda machine, which is 75 cents. And he was speaking as if he was a soda
A
can
soda can.
in this system he was describing. I know who I am. I'm a can. I know my price, 75 cents. But that was such a beautiful phrase, right?
Yeah.
And so I wrote it down. Is it a game? No. Will it
No,
become a
but
game?
it's
Almost certainly not.
maybe combining with other stuff, right? I love the idea of our notebooks are kind of a morgue, and we go back and pick parts of all these dead bodies, and we make
Yeah.
our own new Frankenstein of a game. You know.
I
Uh,
literally did that with Thousand-Year-Old Vampire because all this nonsense in the game book, a
mm-hmm.
lot of it I took out of old notebooks, right? Like this yellow piece of paper with the tape
Mm-hmm.
was from an old notebook. Um,
That's
uh,
great.
I have them going back to college. There's one really nice piece of dirty tape. Oh yeah, this dirty tape frame here. Where is it?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
from a notebook from when I was in college. I'm
Beautiful.
literally going back and rating them for the decorative trim, right? The signatories of authenticity, which say this is old, this has been worked by hand. I'm grabbing those
Yeah.
and then putting them into my fake computer book, uh,
It-
which is something I'm trying not to do with. So you've met a thousand-year-old vampire. Everything there, all these collages are handmade, right? Everything
Mhm.
is handmade for that book, and then that's another way that I am reacting to the book that came before as much as
Okay.
I can.
Oh,
Oof.
so this one is intentional. So you're like always bringing with the subconscious, but you're intentionally reacting to the old book.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm within. Well, it's not in all. It's some of it's digital, but with the new book, I'm actually kind of proud of this. I'm taking a lot of the illustrations from Thousand-Year-Old Vampire, and I'm advancing them a frame, basically. So you
Mm-hmm.
see, a woman and a skeleton and a guy drinking alcohol together, and then in the next frame, in the next book, you'll see that the woman is drinking the guy's blood, and the skeleton is gone, and the
Ah,
the
very
jug they were
cool.
drinking from is broken on the floor. Uh,
Sequential art.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think there's lots of things like that that are going to the next book, which help me help me understand the book as being an intentional progression in time as opposed
Mm-hmm.
to a sequel, and more of the same. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
And
amazing.
I love that I can do this because I don't work with anyone else. There's no grown up, there's no producer, there's no publishing company to tell me no. Uh,
Yeah.
and that's amazing and slow and stupid and risky because, again, I make some of these games, I'm making games that I don't make any money on, but they're all just powered by vampire money. But I have to make them.
Yeah.
I have to make them. Hey,
Yeah.
here's a
The,
quote. Can I read you a thing I found in my notebook? One of the great things I get from teaching is sometimes the students and I have really good discussions. And
mm-hmm.
I said, hey, you have a rule in this little game you made that is clearly broken, doesn't work. But instead of thinking that it's broken, assume how you can imagine how you can change the entire game, the whole world around it to make it true and interesting, right? And
Yeah.
that's because one of my things with students, especially, and with myself, is that the things we make when we're told to make a game are almost always boring, right? They're boring and they're performing a game. They're performing the making of a game. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I tell the students that they have to trick themselves with all, and I give them techniques to do this in order to break what it is they're making and then have it become something more interesting. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things I try to teach them. Because again, you're boring, I'm boring, and we have to fool ourselves into being interesting.
Yeah. I heard an advice another day that's made me rethink a lot of stuff is that every time you hear an advice, try to hear it the other way around, the complete reverse too, and see what you can learn from both perspectives, right?
Nice, like
And
never do this. You mean like, oh,
and
that's nice.
always do this and see how you what can you learn from both sides, right? Because nothing is 100% true, right? Everything have to tailor to our own experience in the situations, and we have to be very careful with this
What
thought of, oh, this is always true, this is always, yeah.
Well, one of the troubles that people have as creators is realizing the categories around the thing that they can change, right? So if I give you a piece of advice and you read it backwards, what you're actually doing is you're finding category you can uncover categories around this thing that you didn't know were there, right?
Yeah.
And then you can manipulate those um, in ways that are more interesting or ways that could make things more interesting, especially
Hmm.
by reading my advice backwards. That's a good, here, watch, I'm putting it down in my little book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Read.
um
Yeah.
I always one of my favorite things about this podcast is always these things we learn from each other,
Yeah.
and this podcast is for the weirdos out there to listen, but in reality, it's mostly for me. I'm inviting people that I admire, people that are making great stuff, and I'm talking to them and learning things, and it's kind of a therapy too. Having other creators to talk to. You talk about having problem to sitting down and writing and stuff. I had a case of burnout last year. I won an award, got a bunch of work, didn't know how to say no, and after a while, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't answer emails or anything, and it was really going to Gen Con and sitting down, connecting with people and having a meal with them and talking and hanging out. And I came back, completely different. And that's the podcast is basically my feeble attempt to extend Gen Con every week and talk to someone and share ideas and stuff. So yeah.
That's so important because you have a community when you're at Gen Con, right? You're part
Yeah.
of this gigantic group of people who all have very similar purposes, even if we have intertribal warfare about the
Yeah.
specifics. And that's one of the things that I absolutely hate about leaving teaching. Because again, I won't be able to teach again if I live in Oregon. I love being in a community where everyone is geographically close to each other. So you meet and see people outside
Oh
of
yeah.
work areas. And that community has a shared purpose, a shared goal. We're all interested in
Yeah.
education and game design. And the geographical closeness of this, all of that makes this so amazing.
Yeah.
And it kills me to leave it behind. Because again, I have students. I'm in my office at all hours, so I have students who come and talk
Mm-hmm.
to me at like 10 p.m. at night.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I mean,
I have my students all signed a book when I went away. Fuck it, it doesn't matter. But yeah,
it does matter.
community is
I like to say teachers matter a lot. I have teachers from my college that I talk to them up to this day. I
Mhm.
have two of them that I call master. You know, one
Yeah,
of them, my kid calls grandma. Also, it's it's really important. And as I said, when I invited you to the show, I said I wanted to be a professor at university. I love my school so much. It's the National Art School here in Brazil. It's a public university. It's free. Uh, it's not very well taken care of by the government, but you can learn a lot, and you can. I went to study design, but I studied painting. I studied sculpture. I studied you know woodwork. It's a lot of you can learn from that, and I wanted so much to go back and maybe teach something that I learned, but you know politics in the academic world, I'm sure you're probably aware of it, made me see that it probably wouldn't happen. So
yeah.
I sought to do something else, but yeah.
Um, one of the really awful things about going back to Oregon is that I have been offered teaching jobs unbidden uh, after I got around that I was quitting here.
Mm-hmm.
But I will never be able to teach in Oregon because it's very crony-ish. For a while before, when I was first trying to teach there, I started looking at who got the teaching jobs that I wasn't getting.
Mm,
And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is someone who's literally never had an art show has beaten me out for this teaching job and the art thing. And they have, a bachelor's degree, and I have an Ivy League master's degree. And it's,
yeah.
oh yeah, that's someone's buddy. And it's that's one of the real problems about Oregon, and
Yeah.
Portland in particular, is
Yeah.
you have to know folks to get anything, and that's
That
heartbreaking. Because again, I like
yeah.
teaching.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened in my university. I was about to graduate. I knew three teachers that were applying for the permanent job there, and was a teacher for drawing. So they were great drawers, but we all knew this other professor called Renato would win because he's incredible. He's amazing. He's award winning. He's as a master. He's like they had a living model. I don't know, drawing the naked person test, and they had a very limited time, and he like made an incredible job. Everybody was saying, "Oh, obviously." The spot is from Renato. Renato is doing the best test. He knows everything, has experience. And who won? Someone that's the daughter of the wife of the director of whatever. And
Yeah,
then I saw, yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna, do all of this, sacrifice of this to study and come back here and just not get it. Because even though I wanted to be a teacher, I really wanted to be a teacher in my school,
yeah,
because it had a historical importance to me. It has a community there, and
yep,
and that was
yeah,
really disappointing. And but yeah, I love making game now. So I don't work. I am actually a tax collector for the government, but I make my games on my free time. So yeah.
I mean, but very few people. I mean, again, I'm actually gonna be making games full time now, and the idea
Yeah,
of that's ridiculous, right? That's just
yeah,
absolutely comically awful.
yeah.
Um,
It's
yeah,
amazing though making games full time. I wanted to try it.
yeah,
Maybe someday.
yeah, and that also
Tim,
means that's less
go
community
ahead.
too. Oh shit, go
Oh
ahead.
yeah, no, go ahead. Last
Oh,
community.
less
It's
community
fine.
because I'm gonna be living in
Yeah.
Oregon, sitting in my garage, typing away, and I won't see non-family
Yeah.
members.
I
For
hope there is community there. Like you said, a gaming community. Maybe you find other game designers, and I would recommend you try one of the techniques I learned it from Richard Huane, which is writing sprints. Like you meet with another
yeah.
creator in a cafe, you write for 30 minutes, you stop, and then you talk about what you were working. I'm
Uh,
enjoying something like this.
Mega and Vincent Baker, of Apocalypse World, were doing along before. everything happened, before all that stuff happened, they were
Mm-hmm.
doing game design and coffee, where they'd go to the same place every week, and anyone who wanted to could just come and drink coffee and talk about game design.
Yeah.
And this whole world of incredibly important game design, of very important, exciting, independent game designers like Epidiah Revachol and all these folks, kind of were in that little circle, and then they all made each other excited about games and gave each other
Yeah.
good ideas. Because that's when
Yeah.
one of my favorite games is Swords Without Master for fantasy games.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible game. Um, and yeah,
It
so yeah,
was
exactly. And I'm
great
just
in
going to
this
emulate
circle.
what they did after I get back to Portland, I think, and say,
Uh,
hey, once a week I'll be here. But the
that's
trouble is, like,
that's
Portland
awesome.
is, again, it's not a geographic thing. It's huge. One of my good friends there is buying a house on the other side of the city, 40 minutes away, and that sucks. So that's, again, I want to see people like walking
Yeah.
around in my day to day
Yeah.
life, like on the school here at
Yeah.
school.
That's hard for a bigger city, but then you probably will have more people, and maybe they're used to spending 40 minutes
Yeah,
getting to places, right?
yeah. There'll be more people there that I can play interesting games with at specific organized events,
Yeah.
versus fewer people that I will meet casually as I physically move through space.
Yeah. Tim, what would you say is the weirdest game you ever played, or maybe a very weird game you played recently that made you think about gaming and game designing in a interesting and different way?
Ooh, it's a brutal question.
Inscription. You already talked about Inscription, which is I'm really
Yeah,
itching to get now. But do you want to say any other games? You talked about very interesting games already. But since I have this question, I always
yeah.
ask again.
It's interesting because you put the adjective weird in there, and that makes me think not games that are doing interesting things, not games that are new and unique in their mechanics, but it makes me think games that feel totally alien, right? Like games that are
Mm-hmm.
outside of language, and that's tough because I have my brain wants to do that really hard. Like, what's
You
the
can.
weirdest possible thing? Um, there are games being made by the young people. Um, these games that are pretty simple and pretty straightforward, and they tend to use off the shelf. Like, here, I'm going to use Unity for this 3D view, and nothing's very fancy. And they'll have one or two weird things, like, hey, the physics on this are really strange. Everything's made of rubber, right? So the villains, everything is rubber. As you walk, you're rubbery.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all this simple exploration of the tools wrapped within this kind of goofy language, that I have trouble explaining, that I see a lot of my students not using but looking at. And so there's like these games that the students say, Professor Hutchings, Professor. I make them call me Professor Hutchings, because everyone
Uh-huh.
else in the department is super informal. And they show me these games. I'm like, this is so bizarre. I don't understand why you want to do this. And it's
Yeah.
because, like, oh, it's really hard to walk when you do this thing, right? Or whatever the fuck it is. And I think that kind of genre, not Crab Warrior, whatever it's called, but there's a sort of genre of games that is really strange. The back room games are a little bit like that. But with all that, I'm now going
Mm-hmm.
to say maybe one of the weirdest games that I'm really thinking hard about, because it's doing so many strange things. That's like a game. Might be John Company, of all things. It's a board game about families running the East India Company that I've been thinking about really hard recently, and it's I can't wrap my head around exactly what it's doing that's so odd, and I really need
Yeah.
to think about it. But it's just, it's a um, Cole Worley game, or the Worley brothers game. Is it
Mm-hmm.
Worley? It's Worley, right? Whirly
Uh,
Gig Games. Anyway, if I just said their names wrong, I'm so fucking embarrassed, because I'm drawing a blank. But anyways, yeah, I can't. I'm not going to go into it unless you prod me.
no, it's okay. I'm even uh searching here. It's no, it's It's not East India Companies, right? What's the name of
It's
the
called
game?
John Company.
John Company. Oh yeah, John Company. It has
And you
this.
are the families. I'm holding the game up.
Yeah,
Running.
Rural. I don't know.
I
Co.
can't. I
Yeah,
can't. I have. The last name is
yeah,
I've convinced myself it's the opposite of whatever it is I remember, and so now I can't remember which way I think it is.
yeah.
But in it, there's all these stages to the game where you have to really think about how things flow. But the players are all technically operating in competition to suck the most money out of the company. So you're
Mm-hmm.
continuously poking each other, even as you have to work together to make sure the money moves. Yeah, and it's this takes us hours and hours to play. Um, yeah, it's really
Yeah, the
well.
board seems very complex. I'm seeing here all these spaces and arrows and and stuff. Yeah.
But it's the whole thing though is that it's a bunch of mini choices. So it's actually the board is
Mm-hmm.
really well designed and it's not really complex at all because you go
Okay.
through it step by step by step by step. But you
Mm-hmm.
have each step though has ripples. It's like, oh, the chairman has to assign money to all of the different departments, and this department we have to look forward in time and say this department needs to do all these things, so they need at least this much money. And
I
it's,
see.
it's it's brutal and
Yeah.
fun and ridiculous, and it's not ridiculous at all, but it's really odd. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Well, hope I will try someday.
can't form the right thought to understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah, what
Cool.
a terrible
Uh,
example. There's a J.
you, you you gave many examples, so
Yeah.
it's only fair. About
Um,
inspiration, I always ask about artists that maybe you draw from, maybe you learned something. You're a teacher, and I always study works of others. I myself, I see being inspired by other artists that aren't necessarily game designers. I talk here about how some comedians inspire the way I approach my work. And what I'm asking you is, do you have any kind of artist or creator that maybe the way they approach their work, maybe they talk about their work, inspires the way you approach your own work?
um, I don't want him to hear this, but I always enjoy hearing how Jason Morningstar talks about his work and how he talks about his process. I really because I think like I was doing a version of what he did before I came to games, and then he was already there when I arrived, and it's like I was like, oh fuck, look at this. This is really cool to see. I think that recently-ish, I've been really thinking hard about Merce Cunningham, who is he's dead now. He's a dance composer, um, and
Mm-hmm.
a modern dance guy. And he's like, oh hey, we're gonna have three groups of people, and they're all doing the same thing, but they're at different angles to the audience. And so he thinks about information in a way around movement and space and not language, right? That's just super cool. And I'm like, that can be utilized for games. Um, oh, I put it
Yeah.
away. Hollis Frampton is a structuralist filmmaker who I think about a lot because he's this mixture of like hyper structuralist thinking, non representational, difficult film, but then some of his stuff's completely goofballs and funny, and I really
Mm-hmm.
like that. And I
Yeah.
actually this is this I've this is new. I don't think I've ever talked about this in public, but one of the very
Okay.
slow games I've been working on is taking Merce Cunningham's film Zorn's Lemma and working it backwards into a game. Oh my fucking god! Loosely based on the concept of uh, a vampire TV show called Midnight Mass, which I never saw the whole series of. No, yeah, Midnight Mass. Midnight Mass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Um,
think it is, right?
yeah, and I take because this Frampton in this film takes all these different historical bits of like the first educational journal for kids, book for kids in the United States, and he uses it for timing and to introduce. Oh, such his films are so interesting. and so hard to watch.
Ah.
What a fucking bad job I did trying to explain that. Oh, jeez.
Well, you're working on it, right? So you're working on the concept. How long have you been working on this
Well, here's the
project?
trouble: is like time is meaningless because I work on it a whole
Yeah.
bunch and then I put it
Yeah.
down for a
How
year.
how many
Um,
you're working on right now? Just so we have an idea.
well, the chronic depression and everything else is kind of whittling that down. I bet 5 or 6 games. I
Oh yeah.
know, but like, if you were to look and see, hey, how many games have actually had progress but are not finished within the past 5 years, I bet there's 40 or 50, 40 games. And then
Wow. Yeah.
5 or 6 of them I'm pushing really hard toward actually finishing like within the near future.
I see. Do you? I used to feel very bad about this kind of stuff too. When I was talking to Linda Codega from
Oh,
Rascal, this
yeah.
reporter, yeah, and we're talking. I think it was Tuesday, and how she made me realize that those, unfinished projects and stuff that we left behind, not as failure that we couldn't finish, but they were just training for the things that we're making or the things we're gonna make in the future, and kind of help me feel a little bit better.
Oh, you shouldn't feel good about that. You should feel terrible. It's totally failure. I mean, yeah, sure. I if I step on different people's heads as I'm climbing out of a pit, oh hey, that was just a ladder made of human bodies which I climbed. Now all of them are dead
But
except me.
it's your own body, so it's okay, right? It's
Yeah,
your
it
own
is at the
work.
top of the pit. I can say that then, but look at the mound of corpses I had to create to get to this condition. So each of those are games I haven't finished. Each of them were lives and
Yeah.
whole worlds of a little experience that 5 or 6 people might care about. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's total failure.
Yeah.
And if you're not learning from your failures, you're a terrible person who deserves what you get.
Yeah.
But still, they're still failures.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Maybe they're just phase. I don't know, because sometimes you will lose interest in them. But I do. I do. Do you come back to them from time, like? Have you been working on something that you left behind for like a few years,
Yeah,
and you got back and you finished something?
100%. I keep circling back.
Oh,
And every
great.
time I
Yeah.
circle back, I usually have a better understanding of what I need to do,
Yes. You
or
grew.
I see that I have no clue what I was trying to do whenever I look at all my work,
Mm-hmm.
and I have no idea. And then I have to, maybe I find something new because I'm misinterpreting whatever mess I'd made. And so I'm like, oh, wait, this is a game about GoBots in the 1980s, which isn't a game I'm working on. But maybe,
Uh,
yeah. I think
yeah. Yeah.
misinterpretation of my intentions and the intentions of other people, of rules, of all sorts of things, is an incredibly rich field of endeavor to
Yeah.
misinterpret things, to misunderstand.
Yeah. It's
Um,
like the advice stuff. Look through the other side, interpret backwards, and see how it goes. Right.
Cthulhu. This is great. I'm going to give us an example. Cthulhu Dark, the original one-page version of the game. I
Mm-hmm.
ran it a couple of times, and I'm like, this is really interesting. But I found out later that I was running it wrong. But I was so sure that I was running it correctly that I'm like, oh, then I must have been playing a different version from, I forgot the guy's name. But no, there was never a version like the way I was running it. But I loved the way I ran it. So now I
Yeah.
have my own game. I did a
Yeah.
similar thing with Ross, with Heart of the Unicorns, night, night something, night walk, where I was fundamentally misinterpreting how it worked. But I'm like, oh, but this is another good game. Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
I weaponize my own stupidity and incompetence. Um,
I think it's a strength. We can see the strength in our weaknesses too, and it's something that kind of bothers me in internet discourse. And what do the author really mean about this rule and this and that, and they want to know exactly what everything is. And I kind of have this sensation that no, just interpret that yourself, because depending on how you interpret the rules, you shape the reality of your world in a different way, and maybe in that reality the world's a little bit grittier or a little bit more forgiving depending on how I interpret this. And if I give my answer, you won't have this freedom that may be interesting for you to have, right?
But
Yeah.
that's like, but here's the trouble though, is like there's like sliders on games. If this
Mm-hmm.
is if I break the game economy by misinterpreting the rules or by making up my own rules, then that's bad.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay to make games that require every rule to be followed exactly. They don't
Mm-hmm.
have to be robust and be able to resist. I know that the people I grew up playing games with would break the game rules to make everything easier, which never made sense because if
Mm-hmm.
everything gets easier for everyone, then it's
It's
just
boring. Why
all
why
you're
we're doing this?
yeah,
Yeah.
all you're doing is you're making yeah, yeah. So it's like, but then again, there's other games where it's like, yeah, we can totally fuck with them and it doesn't matter. And it's funny
Mm-hmm.
because like your highly technical war game, the rules have to be followed exactly, or your Euro game, because or else that's going to break. And then there's this whole world of like Dungeons and Dragons where we can totally fuck with rules and ignore it because none of this really matters. And then we swing all the way back to like some story games where I'm like, I have two rules and you can't fuck
Yeah.
either of them up. You
Yeah.
have to do these two things, or
Yeah.
else everything explodes, which is funny. Yeah,
Yeah, that's true. Like you full circle in a way, right?
yeah.
And it's also some of these games that the rules are more really important to be followed, or sometimes games are drawing kind of from board games to emulate very specific kind of happenings and events,
Mm.
and you know.
There's a category of games we might call like warm body games, Dungeons and Dragons games. From all of them, you needed to have a certain number of people to make the game work, and I think maybe those rules can't be intensely. Uh, they can't demand intense attention because that would break the ability of non-serious rules readers to play the game, right?
Yeah.
But then whenever we're playing, if we're playing John Company, you and I are being fucking awfully serious about how games work, and we have to follow all the rules or else it breaks. Because again, we everyone that we're both super invested, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
More casual and then involve more people too, and more people would be harder to make them everybody follow the protocol and everything, and care so much
And that's a
about
strength
the
of those
proceedings.
games,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
That's just
absolutely.
uh, and the
Work as
whole
intended.
yeah, and the idea is that oh yeah, we totally can change this around because none of this really matters. We can make this our
Yeah.
own thing.
They're kind of
That's awesome.
toys. You can get you don't have to play with that toy if you don't want to, but we can play with this other toy in this world. Tim, we are over an hour and a half talking a
Okay.
lot about games, and now I would like to ask you some of more personal and curiosity questions about you, about your experience, about your beliefs. We talked about religion and spirituality already, and I know you're agnostic, but do you have anything, any kind of maybe philosophy or morals or anything, maybe phrases, your notebook that you write some phrases, something that helps you in your difficult moments when you're struggling with something, uh, anything like this, like
In the great
meditation, or do you exercise, or do you study any kind of philosophy, anything like this?
in the words of the great Peter Code, I know my name, I know my price. No, I, what I do is I watch the people around me who are doing things that I think are admirable, and then I emulate them as well as I can. I just am astonished at the care and generosity and attention to others that some people in my communities give, and I'm just like, that's incredible. I wish I could do that. And then I'm like, oh fuck, actually I can do that. I just have to, pay attention to what I'm doing. Um, at the same time, I'm a fake anarcho-syndicalist, right? I'm like, hey, what we need to make systems that make us as free as possible. blah blah blah, and it's really that's tough. But no, I'm I think the idea is just that I try to be as kind and as generous as I can, and as supportive as I can, and as empathetic. And it's hard a lot of the time, and
Mhm.
I need other people to model it for me. I think that's a big thing. And I
Yeah.
might say something entirely different than this tomorrow, right? But that's what I'm saying right now to this question. Is that
Awesome.
what you were looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you allow me, do you think you incorporated this? You learned this way of acting by observing others through someone that took care of you. You learned it from maybe your parents, or you had to learn this to fix something that you wanted to be better.
I was afraid you're going to ask, how do I incorporate these values into my games? And I don't
Uh,
at all put them into
no,
my
yeah,
games. That's why I was flinching because
no,
yeah, I'm nothing like the games I make. Um,
yeah, because we're exploring things we
yeah.
can't explore in ourselves, right?
What it's a great question because again, my parents both just died recently, and my mom was super kind, and my father was super practical. And I think between those two things, I did get a lot from them. But the people that I see that I'm emulating, it's not my parents. It's although I often channel them, I can't not channel them. Um, but it's again these people like who are building supportive communities that that often are younger than me, right? Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
49 years old, and they are just making decisions and choices that are conscious. They're not they're not just expressing themselves. They're making conscious
Mm-hmm.
decisions that are the best for different people. Oh my God,
It's all
that are
good.
just the best for everyone. Okay, sorry about that.
It's all good.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know. I'm really bad at answering that question right now.
you made it great. Yeah, because we do have a lot to learn from film. The
Yeah,
younger generation that's coming here, they're more confident. They know how to speak more about what they want and be more uh maybe take care more of themselves. That we were just started learning about this self-care thing, right? We
yeah,
never heard about this when we were kids, and now it's everywhere. And we have a lot to learn from this, and this stuff about boundaries, and I think it's very healthy to have this awareness that we have to learn from the newer people, because when we were growing up, like, no grown up would say that they had anything to learn from us, right?
yeah.
So yeah.
Or if they did, they were some kind of weird hippie trickster, who are just
Yeah,
trying to make themselves seem profound.
yeah,
Which actually, listen to how
like
profound
us.
they sound. It's
Yeah.
really working, right? I
Yeah.
learn from the children. Oh God. Oh shit. Hang on a second. Oh, I don't
Yeah.
have it. I put them all away. So much of my stuff is packed. I just realized I made fun of myself because I have one of my games called Old Laura's Cave. Yeah, there's the character who is in it who leads the expedition has my name, and there's a version of me, and they die. And in the little epitaph thing, it's like, I only hope my students learned as much from me as I learned from them, which is one of the tritest, stupid, weakest things a teacher could say. And so I put that in there as my despicable
it's
character.
it's true though. It's not. It's true though.
Yeah, but it's also
I
not. It's just the thing you say, right?
I mean, you do learn from them. I mean, I was a student from the teacher that I talked about university, and I did teach them stuff. So I think it is a trade, because especially teachers in fields like our arts and something that's it's constantly changing, there's this real risk of being stagnant, and you're like, oh yeah, I know, I studied this, I know everything there is to know, and that's not true, right? So
Yeah,
it is true that we learn a lot from them as they learn from us, even though it's very corny and over said. uh Maybe it is because it makes sense, like the archetypes. They exist because they work.
yeah.
talking about more stuff about we talk about you don't believe in ghosts, but do you have you ever seen, maybe since you lived in the Midwest, have you ever seen a UFO or anything like this?
No, no,
No.
and I want to. I'd pay money for the
Yeah.
privilege. Um,
Yeah.
I no, I one of my brother's friends never. He didn't see Bigfoot, but he smelled him. I
Oh
grew up
yeah.
around these people, right? And there's
Yeah.
such an intense need to believe in stuff, that there's more. And I've always been like, no, this is it. This is all we got. And even if I saw a ghost, sure, that changed a lot about the way I lived. But right now, there's nothing to do but live the best possible, most interesting life we can, in spite of the lack of
Yeah.
ghosts. In spite of the lack of an afterlife. Um, yeah. No, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
I'm gonna turn into dirt. I'm gonna die and turn into dirt. Hopefully, a long time away from now, but more
Yeah.
statistically likely next week when I take a 2,000-mile drive in a beaten up, untrustworthy car.
We hope not. We hope not.
Yeah, that
And
we there's a big we there that maybe isn't is too inclusive.
no, there is probably like 5 or 6 people as you're talking about. Yeah. Uh, you mentioned about this weird stuff and things that you saw, like this monsters, and I have a curious question about the things that you dream about. Do you remember the dreams
Ooh,
you have, and do you have weird dreams or anything like this?
that's actually really cool because I am at a point now where I will remember things and I won't know if they were a dream from 30 years ago or if they were real.
Wow.
And I had to like really think and say, okay, yeah, a big weird landscape with little cabins everywhere with monsters inside that are waiting to come
Hmm.
out when the sun comes out. That's not real. But yeah, it's awesome. I love my dreams. I want to dream all the time. I have not bizarro dreams. I have dreams that are realistic enough that I can act within them in a way that is intelligible.
Wow.
But then sometimes it's like, hey, this is a flying dream, and I flip between terrified and elated. It's one dreams are the best thing ever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I
And do you
wish
take notes for them or no?
I sometimes I used to, and I don't anymore because and this is a big deal for me. When you put things into language, they change, right? And
Mm.
so as soon as I tell the story of something, I'm now remember the story for the most part, and the more I tell the story, the more those words replace what happened. So I have a strategy now where if so, I will take really interesting, fascinating, upsetting things, and I will never put them into words, and they never get broken in my brain. And that's fine that other people don't hear them. That's great. So I'm
Yeah.
like,
But
hey, I'll tell you this story. Some other stuff happened, but I'm never going to put those into words. Um,
okay. But you're able to remember then, even if you don't take
yeah,
notes of them?
yes.
Wow.
Sometimes, actually, sometimes I realize I forget stuff.
Do
I
you
do
do you
forget.
have a good memory overall?
No, no, not at all. Well,
Oh yeah.
yeah, actually, I do. I just read something that really stuck with me. I read this little blurb about Napoleon in Elba and how he started learning English. And the person teaching him English said, "Oh yeah, the guy has he has a great intelligence, so he learns all the structures, but a terrible memory, so he can't remember any of the actual vocabulary words." And I'm like,
Oh,
"Oh, I'm no great intelligence, but I kind of feel that." I can remember the systems and the useful things that are useful to me, but I can't remember specifics, right?
the
So I have
details,
I
yeah.
have a really bad memory, but I have a really absorby tool building brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of
Yeah.
my troubles is I've been sitting with a student for the past couple of weeks. He keeps coming back to me. Great guy with amazing questions, and I can't provide the names of the books that were formative for me in the way I built the critical tools that help power my art thinking.
Oh,
Um, and that sucks, and it's
yeah.
heartbreaking. Um, yeah, wow. Actually, there's a literary criticism book that just blew my mind around formalism in art. It wasn't an art book either, but and I have tried for decades to find it.
You can't
There was
remember the name?
can't remember the name.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe one when we remember. Yeah. Now,
Um,
go ahead.
I have about 10, 15 more minutes.
Okay, I'll
Just
just go to the last questions. They're like my whimsical, fast questions to know a little bit about your personality, things you like. So, uh, if you could live in any fictional world or universe, where would you choose to live, and who would you be there? And that can be from game, from literature, from comics, from movies, anywhere.
jeez, I don't know. Um, the part of me that quips, that says funny off the cuff things, would
Yeah.
probably name a porn movie. Um, but I don't think that's yeah. No, I have trouble with questions like this. I don't know.
Okay.
Because I don't want to
Okay.
live in a place that's interesting and full of terror. But then again, like, I don't want to live in Thomas More's Utopia either, right? I guess that's technically a book. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. It's a
So
whimsical question.
I'm
It
gonna go
doesn't
with my
have to
first
be
answer then.
okay. What movie then?
Oh fuck! You called my bluff. Even if I could name a porn movie, I would have to pretend I couldn't in order to
Yeah.
maintain my squeaky clean persona.
Okay. Okay. uh, the next one is kind of the reverse of this. Would be if you could take anything from our weird fictional universe world, from comics, movies, etc., and make that thing real in our own world. What would you choose and why?
Mm. I think I would, from a lot of books, I would take a permanent and happy ending as a kind of literary structure and apply it to the real
For
world.
life.
Like, oh, hey,
Yeah.
we have solved this problem and there will be no more significant problems. So we're done. I think that kind of finality is what I would take out of a number of fictional books if I could.
Yeah. That's happy endings. Make happy endings real.
I don't even
That's
know
what
if
we're saying, huh?
like it doesn't even have to be happy, just not awful, but also done.
That's
It's
awful.
solved, right? Like, oh hey, that climate
Okay.
change thing, we'll never get a happy or even permanent ending. It's going to be permanent, changing turmoil until either there's no one left,
Yeah.
to experience it, or thousands of years have gone by or whatever, right?
I
A
don't
little
know. I hope not. I hope we get somewhere with this.
well, I'll get in my big SUV and drive 2,000 miles. Um, and then we'll talk about what I do for climate change.
Yeah.
What a hypocrite I am! I am a terrible person. I really am.
We are, to be
No, I'm
honest.
like raising the
It's
bar. It's the
it's
one
it's
thing I excel at.
impossible to have ethical consumerism under capitalism, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, but I can
we
still
are
consume less.
we are stuck in this mess. But anyway, superpower. If you could have any superpower, what superpower would you have, and what would be the first thing you would do with that?
I think the answer to both those questions is just the word fly. I totally just want to fly.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah,
Can't help anyone, can't make the world better, but I can fly
yeah.
around. Um,
That's
yeah,
great. You
and
would
I'm
go
sure that
anywhere specifically, or your first flight, or just enjoy the air under your
it's about
armpits?
the looping around, the experience,
Uh,
the just being in the air. I wouldn't go anywhere. I'd say, okay, I'm done flying. I'm going to go watch TV now. Um, it's not like
yeah, that's
yeah,
awesome. Yeah.
hmm,
Last
yeah.
question, Tim, is do you remember the last time you felt really happy, just grateful for being here and being alive? And if you
Hmm,
do, would you mind sharing with us what you're doing and where were you?
yeah. Um, it's absolutely heartbreaking to say it's like here at this school, I will walk down a corridor and I will have a very brief interaction with a student or another faculty or a staff member or whatever. And there's just this moment of connection. And it's just, oh, that's really nice. There was no problem. We just chatted and we moved on. And that's like, oh, that's such a good feeling. And I won't have that again when I'm living in a garage. Yeah, and that sucks.
Yeah. But you can
that,
always remember that, and it certainly you have more, right?
that's worse. I remember being happy. What a terrible, terrible thing, terrible situation to be in.
No, because you know it will happen again someday, right? I mean, I think of this kind of happiness, these moments I try to remember with gratitude as something like I can see the sky, and like for example, life can be hard, and like we can see the sky because there's all these clouds that we're worrying about stuff. But I
Mhm.
can remember the sky is there. I may not be able to see it right now, but I remember it's there. You know.
Well, as a North American, the
Mm.
next time that someone like me will experience a close, geographically tight community with people with a shared cause will be whenever I enter an assisted living community and I'm waiting to die, right?
I
And
hope not. Yeah.
no, this is the thing. Like, there's nothing within my world. There's nothing in between there, right? Between me living in
Yeah.
a house with trees in the yard and the
Mm-hmm.
time that I do that, unless I'm on another college campus or similar thing. But again, like, there's a reason that like fat white guys with beards in the Midwest all go berserk and become these bizarre
Yeah.
hate machines. It's because we're
Isolation. Yeah.
totally disassociated from people. Uh,
Yeah.
we become friends
That's
with the
true.
radio voices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I think RPGs are so important to be true, because it's one of the few games that kind of makes us sit around with other people and share stories and share experiences, and it's not isolated as playing a video
Yep.
game or something.
Yeah.
And you make very weird games, you experience a lot, and what I'm seeking nowadays is to explore ways to make role-playing games that you can't play online, that you have to play sitting at a table with other people, because I think that's so important. And nowadays it's almost an act of rebellion, right? Get
Yeah.
out of your screen, sit at a table and share something with other people. And yeah.
But here, and I'm going to offer the sad, terrible, ironic counterpoint to that, which is that when I play games with people, I kind of seek out people who are nice and I like them, but I don't know them that well. I don't want to connect with people and become their friends. And because the people I become very close friends with when I play games with them, there's too much kind of bleed and stuff. There's too much, like, I can't
Mm,
disassociate that this is my pal from what we're doing right now. And so there's like a degree of, like, not anonymity, but I don't want to play games with people that I have bonded with, which is
I
fucked up.
see.
Isn't that
Yeah.
stupid? And so it's like, maybe like
Yeah.
gamers, and you can't not become friends with people eventually. Gamers are this terrible resource that you eventually consume, and then they become friends, which is fine, but fuck them for playing games with them.
Yeah,
What
that's
a,
weird. I know. I like both. I like both.
yeah.
Yeah.
But and the thing is I'm also talking about, like, I'm playing games when I'm talking about games that are like these weird, serious games where we're inhabiting characters and having these
Yeah.
feelings. And I don't mean, and of course, this is a big generalization of the thing I just said, because, but yeah, it's tough. It's strange for me.
Yeah.
Um, and
W-
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. It's I'm I'm done. That's were all my questions. I
Oh,
am really grateful for having you here, and for for your work that you do, your creativity, and the things that you shared here. I learned a lot, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Do you have any last messages to the wonderful readers out there that might be listening to us still?
oh, fuck, I didn't. Oh, well, I have a question for you. Like, on the wall behind you, there's like a bunch of stickers or something,
Yeah,
kind of over your shoulder on a
yeah.
white
Let
wall. Are
me.
those? What are those? Can I ask?
Yeah, let me. Oh, RPG stickers.
Oh,
Can
nice.
you
And they're
see?
stuck to like a cabinet. I see.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cool.
With a bunch of, there's a bunch of books like my
Yeah.
own how RPG stuff.
Oh, those are upside down chairs behind you. Wow, I
Yeah.
was not able to process them when they were fuzzy. Okay, cool. I don't have a message to share.
Okay.
I will and I say this as someone who has like an anti-fascist statement on his website that makes people angry. But yeah, no, I don't. Not right now. I didn't. I had to prepare.
Cool.
I think
No worries.
my message is to know your name and to know your price, because
That's perfect. That's
if you
perfect.
do know your price, you're actually in a really better position than not knowing your price.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I would say know your value, because I hope someday we abolish this price stuff and money stuff. So
I know my value.
your worth. Yeah,
I
know
know
your
my
worth.
worth, and what I need to know is the price that I can charge. Because if it's based on my value purely, I'll never get anything worth
Yeah.
getting out of bed for.
Well, you're very too humble, actually. But I mean, thank you very much for doing this and for sharing and for talking 2 hours with me. And can you take us out saying the catchphrase of the show? Keep it weird, everybody.
You want me to say that?
Yeah, if you can,
I
if you
can
want.
totally say that. Keep it weird, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Weird Games and Weirder People. If you'd like to keep up with the show, please subscribe to be notified when we release new episodes. If you'd like to support us, please leave a review or head on to code-fi.com/WGNWP. See you next time, and remember, weird is the new wonderful.